When we are disappointed, hurt, or angry, we have a hard time seeing hope, believing that we can start over. Instead, we shut ourselves in, ponder the mistakes we have made, perhaps look for someone to blame, and rack our brains for what ifs, for alternatives in history that are no longer possible. In the texts that make up the resurrection narratives, we are never told of disciples who immediately believe or who are suddenly convinced that Jesus is risen from the dead. Rather, we see journeys, we see searching, we see moving from disbelief to trying to believe. I believe that it is here at the bottom that we find the path to which the disciple of every age is called. In this Sunday's Gospel, the image of the closed doors of the upper room is repeated. The first day of the resurrection has passed. It is evening. The announcement has been made, but the disciples are still locked in. The place where they are is the upper room, the place where Jesus gave his life for love. Yet everything seems futile. Fear terrifies them. The upper room resembles our life, our heart. When the Lord spoke to us, gave Himself to us, made us experience His presence so many times. But just like the upper room, our heart has closed its doors, perhaps because of fear. It's a heart that does not want to let go of hope, a heart that is suspicious, a heart that does not believe in principle that Jesus is the Lord. But just as in front of the closed doors of the upper room, so in front of the closed doors of our hearts, Jesus does not give up. He still enters and stands in the middle, in the center. That is to say, he takes again the place from which he was dispossessed by fear, by anger, by disappointment. Another feature of the resurrection narratives is the struggle of the disciples to recognize Jesus. It is the same for us. When we are focused on our fears, we hardly notice that the Lord is beside us. Jesus makes himself known in a very specific way. He shows his wounds, his hands pierced by the nails of the cross, and his side torn by the spear. They are the signs of his suffering because wounds, even our own, are never useless. They tell us who we are. Our pain is our story. Our wounds tell how we have loved. Jesus is not ashamed and does not hide the humiliation and contempt he suffered. Despite this struggle to believe, despite the fears and suspicions, Jesus does not hesitate to entrust to these unprepared disciples the fundamental mission to receive the Holy Spirit in order to bring forgiveness to the world. What then is the mission that the Lord continues to entrust to us? Not the mission to judge, but the mission to forgive, that is, to become workers of mercy. This is how we change the world, by helping to forgive, to rebuild relationships, to renew mutual trust. But we can say all this, but if you do not see it, if you do not see the fruits, it's hard to believe that it really happened. Thomas is the image of all those people who cannot believe because there's a community that does not live what it says. The disciples say that they have met the risen one, but 8 days later, the doors of the upper room are still closed. Nothing has changed. They are still afraid. They are still full of mistrust. How could Thomas believe that they had met Jesus? And what was the point of this encounter if it did not change the lives of the disciples? See, Thomas is a twin to each one of us, for we are all struggling for faith and for stability within the boundaries and relationships of community. We are always animated by doubt and always seeking autonomy, despite the experiences of grace that run through our lives. Our hearts often remain frozen. Thomas thinks the solution is to put his finger on Jesus' wounds, just as we do when we find no other way to deal with painful situations than to keep telling ourselves what happened. We take a certain pleasure in returning to the sadness of our lives. Thomas is like us. Like him, we love to put our finger on the sore spot. But in spite of our unbelief, in spite of our anger and resentment, the risen Christ comes back through our closed doors and urges us to go out, to open the doors so that we can get out of our battle and breathe the joy of Easter again. In the end, of course, the invitation is to believe, even though we have not seen. But faith, the true faith, the one we choose, the one we make our own, can only be arrived at through a journey of growth that knows how to look deeply, that knows how to make room for the truest questions, so that we can have a personal encounter with the risen Christ. We must have the courage to allow the questions, the doubts, even the rebelliousness that dwells within us to speak without filling everything and at once with empty words to appease consciences and fears. Thomas, my Lord and my God, is not an idea or a general profession of faith, but the confession of a personal relationship that turns doubt into a promise of friendship and fidelity.